This is ChangeMakers with Katie Gore, finding the right solutions for the affordable housing community.
Welcome back to my conversation with Doug Menges, the Executive Vice President of Many Mansions. We've been talking about Many Mansions' mission to provide homes and inspire hope through quality affordable housing, services, and education around Ventura and Los Angeles counties. Now, Doug, let's get into your highly publicized Mountain View apartments. Can you break down what it looks like and how it came together?
I love to talk about Mountain View. My wife and I have 6 kids, and Mountain View was my 7th child. So it's 77 units of multifamily rental apartments. It has 19 3-bedrooms, 21 2-bedrooms, and the rest 30-something 1-bedroom apartments. It's on 3 acres of land. It's right on the highway as you go into Fillmore, California, which is across the ridge from Thousand Oaks. So that's the technical description. When we first bought the land, and we bought it for a very good price 7 years ago, it was subject to several developers trying to build on it, and they walked away because right in the middle of this otherwise flat piece of property was this 16.5-foot gully that bisected the land. And I know it's 16.5 feet because I crawled down there with a tape measure once to go, I wonder what we could do with this. That's how it started. We bought this piece of property thinking, we may be able to make this work. It had several advantages. One, it was listed on the city of Fillmore's overall plan. Every city in California has to file a housing element as part of their overall plan for their city. And right there, where Mountain View was going to be built was this piece of property that said, yes, one day this could be suitable for affordable housing. So we had that going for it. We had the support early on. We had the support of neighbors because I went door to door and asked neighbors what they thought of having us build there. I have to give most of the credit, though, to the city. The city of Fillmore was always available to sit down. They had some initial ideas. We worked with them on their initial ideas, came up with some of our own, and together through that process, along with our fabulous architects. I don't know if I can give a shout out to RRM Architects, but they had a huge part in making this work. And we came with several designs and eventually landed on basically 7 buildings that were arranged in sort of a courtyard fashion that had underneath parking. So they're 3-story buildings, but a lot of the parking is on the first floor of these townhomes. And the city was very clear. They did not want this to look like an apartment block. They wanted it to look like townhomes. They wanted it to look like, frankly, condos. And so we built it such that inside it's an apartment building, but to look at it from the street or from the parking lot, it looks like a series of townhomes that could be in Nantucket or Montecito. And that, with the color scheme that the city came up with, I have to give them full credit. It looks like you're on some beach somewhere. It's just absolutely gorgeous.
I'm curious what you heard when you went door to door.
I heard a lot of positives. I heard, does this mean that our street's going to get fixed? As a matter of fact, it did. We redid the street and we addressed the parking concerns up front. And keep in mind, the land before was this sort of scrub vegetation, a former avocado orchard. It did not look very attractive. It had a couple industrial buildings on there as well. And we've transformed it to a real showplace. We also focus on the fact that we were bringing in a lot of families into the school district because there's 19 3-bedrooms and 21 2-bedrooms, we brought in a lot of kids. And, schools today struggle with keeping up their enrollment. So I think that was a positive. And then actually, we listened. We sat down. We did several open houses. We showed our designs. We worked with the neighbors to say, hey, can you move this, or can you change that, or can you move this wall slightly? And we listened, and to the extent we could, and most times we could, we changed our design to keep our neighbors happy.
It sounds like through this collaborative experience, you really were able to reduce the stigma associated with affordable housing. Is that too much of a stretch to say, or is that really how you feel like it was applied?
The city manager of Fillmore says that this has become their model of how housing, any kind of housing, is built in Fillmore. And city managers typically don't say things like that
Right.
unless they mean it. We also worked with local artists too. We hired a local Fillmore artist to paint a mural in our community room, big, I'd say 12-foot by 9-foot wall that depicted everything that a child, in the Fillmore school district would see and would think about, even aspirational things like space travel. So we tried to incorporate a lot of what was going on in Fillmore into the overall design.
Excellent. I love hearing that. It really speaks to every affordable housing practitioner and community developer's heart when you can see all of those pieces come together. I'm curious also what the funding layers or how the project financially became feasible.
Well, again, it's one of those classic multiple layers. We have traditional debt from a permanent lender. We have something called federal tax credits, which are really part of any major project these days. These are tax credits that have been around ever since our first development, back in the 70s, back in the, I guess, late 70s, early 80s. And tax credits are just that. They're investor-led funding for which the investor gets a low-income tax credit to write off their other income. We also have money from the state, which helped a lot. We also have money in the form of rental vouchers from the Area Housing Authority. That helped a great deal. We also got some zoning relief from the city. That helped a great deal. So quite a bit of funding that frankly took many years to cobble together, which is pretty typical in this business.
As a developer, why do you think the cost of building affordable housing is so high?
Well, it is high. We talk about the cost per unit, and to the uninformed, the response we get is always, I could build a single family home for that. Why don't you give me $50 million and I can build a lot of homes and house people, which of course is not the way it works. Things are expensive these days because, again, going back to the five forces that really rule affordable housing, the type of land that is needed to make affordable housing less expensive simply isn't available. Typically, we're building on an acre or less. So you need density. You need scale in this business to make things more reasonable. And all those funding sources, well, guess what? All those funding sources come with their own lawyers. And so on a construction closing call, which typically is 30 plus people, half of whom are attorneys, all of whom we pay their bills. So the structural impact causes things to be expensive. And then Those neat features like energy and water, all the rest. Well, those are expensive. I mean, they're meant to last a long time, but the cost of building those things up front is much more expensive than if we were simply to put up 3-story block apartments. So it's really the structure that makes it expensive. There's some ways around it. Right now, we've just started a modular construction project in Camarillo, outside of Camarillo, where the units themselves are built offsite and then trucked down the highway and then fit together like blocks, um, which makes it a little cheaper. It makes it go a lot faster. So we're trying to do things to manage the costs, but it's going to be more expensive than a typical market rate apartment.
And all of those layers are appropriately watching risk and due diligence, and they're building in that structure appropriately, but all of that is also adding to the length of time it takes to do that, which also is raising up the cost. So the modular aspect that you mentioned, I'm sure, is reducing at some levels the that lead time. What are you seeing as maybe the turnaround, or I hate to say how fast you can move when using a modular product, but tell us what you're going through, and
Yeah.
what you're seeing will impact the market there.
Yeah, so I can just do a quick compare and contrast. We're building 50 units of homeless senior housing using modular. That will take 11 months to build, less than 1 year. Mountain View, which was only slightly larger, that took roughly double. That took 20 months once we were finally through all the construction and all of the street work. The difference between 11 months and 20 months,
Hmm.
when you're talking on a construction loan of tens of millions of dollars, is substantial. That's millions in savings. That's what we see as the biggest promise for modular.
Just on a macro level, how do you go through and build or balance the financial, the social, the environmental aspects of your project?
It starts with, I hate to say teamwork. I know that's an overused, sort of phrase. But what we do is when we have a design, at least initially on the real estate side, is then we share that with the folks who are going to be providing services and in our adult services unit and also our youth programs unit. And we also share it with our property management team, and we ask, is this the right look for your offices? Is this the right look for resident services? Is this the right look for the parking lot? How many trash receptacles would you like? How many, down to doggy poop stations would you like? Where should we put the children's playgrounds? What other amenities might you want? Do you want a dog park? Do you want a teen activity center? Do you want just a grassy area with a picnic? And so we start to craft, the overall look early on. And that's come through trial and error. If we don't reach out early on to our internal partners, I think we leave our residents not getting the best experience. So the second way we balance is we look at our population and we determine the best way to service them. In supportive housing, you're required to have adult services case managers. These aren't therapists, but these are folks that sit with our most needy residents every week, every month, and go through and talk about the issues that they're having. Some of it is peer counseling. Some of it is simply a resource referral. Some of it is we've recently hired a great case manager who is doing community services, community outreach for our non-supportive housing residents. So we layer that on, and then we talk about, well, what type of, based on the population we expect, what about those kids? What type of youth programs can we have? Can we afford? We started quite a few years ago a college and career track in most of our apartment communities where we're trying to talk about the benefits of a career, why someone should consider college. We have through the generosity of our board of directors, we have a scholarship program for our residents called Vicky's Fund. So we layer that on, and then it all comes together. Again, we've been doing this for decades. With every project, we learn something new, and then we add that into the calculation.
One thing you mentioned that I want you to expand on here is a career in the field of affordable housing or this scholarship program. Tell us more about that.
So I myself am a what I would call a corporate retread. I had a great career in banking and insurance. I started here, not quite 10 years ago, as a junior project manager, starting all over again because I love affordable housing. We try to attract people that are curious, that want to fix things, that maybe have some good project skills, but are great people that collaborate, that want to work as a team. You're not going to find any solo artists, any successful solo artists in any successful affordable housing companies. And through our scholarship program, we're trying to get kids into college and then come back. We have several of our youth program counselors that started out and in the third grade in our homework club. We're seeing a lot of interest to come back and help us manage and help the next generation.
As you mentioned, you've got such a wide, impressive background in finance, accounting, real estate. You called yourself a corporate retread, which is really classic there. What inspired you in the beginning, though, to really join Mini Mansions?
Back in the dark ages, which is 1989, I was graduating with an MBA from Harvard Business School. I had taken 1 year, my last year, and done an independent study in affordable housing. I worked with some organizations in Boston. Boston was having a kind of a resurgence, a renaissance, if you will, back then of developing affordable housing, and it just stuck with me. I was doing probably the worst, most scattered job search in the world back then. I didn't know what I wanted to become, but I thought I would want to get into affordable housing development. There was a guy based on the West Coast, and his name was Don Turner. He was working at a big affordable housing developer called Bridge Housing, based in the Bay Area at the time. Don Turner, I consider him the godfather of affordable housing. They now have named the Turner Center at Berkeley after Don Turner. I called him up. I called him up like any sort of MBA hotshot, full of himself student. I called him up. I was coming out to the East Coast to talk to I forget now, some software company. And he answered his own phone. And I said, Mr. Turner, he said, call me Don. I said, Don, I'm coming out to the West Coast. I want to sit down with you and talk about affordable housing, maybe a career in affordable housing. Don had 3 degrees from Harvard. I only had 1. And he said, "Hey, when are you coming out? I'll, we're right by the airport. I can pick you up. I can give you a tour." I'm like, "That is fantastic." And then I didn't follow through. I didn't. I got busy. I forget. It was either Hewlett Packard or who knows, Intel. One company wanted to see me for a second interview, and I was stupid enough to cancel my interview with Don Turner. And it has always stuck with me. 7 years later, Don unfortunately died in a plane crash. He was traveling with the Secretary of Commerce in Bosnia, and
Oh,
and
yes. Yeah.
and and the plane went down. I never got to meet him. Never got to meet him. That has always stuck with me ever since then. And I went on to a career, like I said, in banking. I worked for Citibank Mortgage. So I nibbled at the edges of housing, even affordable housing, and I vowed that one day I would get back into it. While I was in my corporate career, I actually joined the board of many mansions. And then when I retired, I became their junior project manager. And that's how I landed here.
That is amazing because you really blended quite a bit of the crossroads there from your real estate and finance background to what is needed. And then obviously the attachment, the personal attachment. What are some of the goals that you have or moving forward? We've now talked about your ramp to get here. Moving forward, what are some of the goals and aspirations that you have for either yourself or many mansions?
I want to continue helping many mansions become, the great nonprofit in this space. I now manage quite a bit. I manage most of the operations. I work closely with our resource development division, the fundraisers, and they do fabulous work. I also work closely with the real estate team. They do fabulous work. Like I said, we have 5 projects now in construction. We're going to double our size in the next few years. There's a lot of growth opportunity. There's a lot of potential. If you're interested in, having this dynamic career, you can do a lot of things. This is a great place to be. I want to see us continue experiment with technology. I think there's a place, for the advanced technology, things that you hear about here in affordable housing. It's a great future, I see.
I've been speaking with Doug Menges, the Executive Vice President of Many Mansions. Thanks again, Doug.
Thanks for having me. I enjoyed it.
Thanks for listening to ChangeMakers with Katie Gore. To find out more about Katie, go to quadel.com. That's QUADEL.com. This has been a production of Forbes Books Radio.